Finance Committee to order, and as this is an opportunity for the committee to receive budget amendments from various committees. We only have one committee before us tonight, but the procedure is that we will hear from the chair of the committee to give us an overview of the amendments that are also included in our packet. After that, I'll call on any supervisors wishing to speak to amendments that they have posted on the agenda, and then I will proceed to calling on anybody wishing to speak from the public. And if you're wishing to speak or in some form register support or opposition to anything in the budget amendments, please, if you haven't already done so, please complete a registration form and bring it up to me so I know that you're available to speak. Speakers will have up to 3 minutes with the exception of supervisors. So with that, we have Public Protection and Judiciary, which has oversight of court counsel, clerk of courts, criminal justice, law clerks, family court services, medical examiner, district attorney, sheriff, public safety, communications, emergency management, and juvenile court. Supervisor McCarville.
Thank you. Tonight, I have the amendments that the Public Protection Judiciary Committee has passed, and we're here to speak about tonight. And the first one being PP&J-0-01, and that would be with regards to a half-time position. The intent and justification of that position is it's a new half-time social worker for the PRP, otherwise known as the Parental Representation Project. It's the most cost-effective way to gather information to best inform the criminal court, juvenile court process. Parents are reluctant to divulge all information to government social workers, particularly when the worker has removed children from the home. This, in turn, will lead to better and faster identification of possible informal supports for the family, which is likely to lead to faster and safe and effective permanency through the reunification, relative placements, or guardianships by those the parents trust. That would end court jurisdiction and need for the costly out-of-home case and formal service provisions. This position will assist attorneys by doing some of the investigatory work that the attorneys now do for themselves. And this is a top request of 17 judges. PP&J-0-02, and this is to create a full-time victim witness case manager. The intent and justification for this is with current staffing levels, the victim witness unit is struggling to meet the statutory required levels of service that are defined in Chapter 950 and 48. The unit has been using LTE funds to meet the demand, which continues to increase. Victim contacts in the juvenile program have increased from 1,809 in 2016 to 3,016 in 2018, and they continue to climb. The work performed by the position in PP&J-02, the victim witness case manager, is statutorily mandated. Okay. Move on. Number 3 is to create a full-time victim witness case manager position. The intent and justification on this is to focus efforts on repairing crime-related harm with victim-centered restorative justice approaches that promote healing. PP&J-04. This is amendment will reimburse state bar dues for the staff attorneys. The intent and justification for this is the Dane County's staff attorneys serve 17 Dane County judges with researching the law and helping draft legal decisions. They're paid $21.17 an hour, $2 extra for inmate litigation. The amendment would reimburse the staff attorneys for their state bar dues. currently $496 a year, which is a benefit that the county already provides for the Dane County Assistant District Attorneys. PP&J 05. This is the staff attorneys will have the same paid holidays as other county employees. And the intent and justification, the Dane County staff attorneys serve the 17 Dane County judges with researching the law and helping draft legal decisions. They are paid $21.17 an hour and $2 extra for inmate litigation, are not paid for holidays. The amendment would provide 8 hours of holiday pay for each of the 10 county holidays. At present, the staff attorneys are expected to work extra hours on other days to make up for the holidays. Therefore, making the holiday change will have no budget effect, although the attorneys will be working fewer hours in the year. P&J 06, shelter and detention fees. The intent and justification on this, it's a reduction of $1,500. The parents of youth who are in home detention program are charged $3 a day. These fees are recognized in the Human Services budget because the Human Services Department administers the billing and collection of the fees. An ordinance amendment is pending to eliminate these fees, and this amendment recognizes a reduction in revenue to the county. Okay. PP&J 08. This is the goal of this effort is criminal justice improvement. Description is the Community Justice Center needs assessment, and the intent and justification. The Criminal Justice Council directed its racial disparities subcommittee to investigate the potential for a community justice center in Dane County. A needs assessment is a systematic examination of quantitative and qualitative data from a variety of community partners and government sources. The goals are to inform planning, generate buy-in, and set the foundation for the development of a future community justice center. The needs assessment must engage communities that are most impacted by the current criminal justice system. The engagement is a component of the needs assessment and is an essential part of the process. Dane County shall seek local champions and national partners to match resources and their technical assistance in this effort. And I seem to have placed 08. I could probably give that to you off the top of my head for the capital budget. And that is $20,000 for the replacement of equipment in the juvenile detention area. That is, I believe, over 20 years old, if I'm not mistaken.
About 12.
About 12 years old and is in need of repair. And that is a capital budget item for $20,000.
Thank you, Supervisor McCarville. Any questions for Supervisor McCarville? All right. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
And now I will move on to Supervisor Kiefer. You're registered to speak in support. Listed just budget in general.
So I have 3 budget issues tonight. First, paying the bar dues for the attorneys. I did submit to you, to the chair, a slightly corrected version. It turns out there's actually 6 staff attorneys rather than 5, but the bar dues are actually $283 to $496, not $496 for everyone, so it kind of offsets it. I left the amount the same, which is $2,480. I think we'll actually be below that because most of the staff attorneys, probably all of them actually, will be covered by the 283 rate, which is for the newer staff attorneys. I think it's an important benefit, and I know that at least 2 of our judges are here, and I've been told by the judges that they've heard from the staff attorneys that they're very appreciative of this proposal. Then, with regards to the paid holidays, again, pretty simple. Right now, they're supposed to make up days when there's a holiday. So if it's Labor Day, they're supposed to somehow work 8 hours extra during that week to make up for it. We would eliminate that so they get the same 10 holidays that everyone else gets. And again, I've told the staff attorneys are very appreciative of this change. Won't have any budget effect because the judges will just be getting a total of 80 fewer hours of work from the staff attorneys per year. And they're willing to do that just to be fair to the professionals who do such an important job for us here in the court system. The third issue, I guess, started as a budget amendment. Now it's just a budget issue because it did not actually get a vote in PP&J. That was my amendment to have at the cost of $6,500, a deputy to attend our county board meetings. That issue did not, frankly, get a lot of support on PP&J. Was moved but not seconded, so it did not come up to you. So at this point, it's just a budget issue. And the budget issue I want to raise is I do think that we should have a discussion on this board about the reality that we live in, the America that we live in, where there are mass shootings. And at times they have targeted local government. That's what happened in San Bernardino County, where a local government meeting was attacked by a mass shooter. That happened in Virginia Beach, where local government offices were attacked. It happened 30 years ago in this building where 2 people were randomly killed by a person who walked in with a gun. I understand there's really not support for the original idea of having a deputy, but I think we should think about what other options there may be. I will just point out, I don't think it's a good idea, and I'm not recommending it, or I will point out that as someone who goes into the same room as the city council chambers and county board chambers, which is also the municipal court chambers, when I go there during the day for municipal court, I have to go through a metal detector to go into the room. That metal detector is then unplugged and is not used when we use that exact same room in the evening for county board meetings. I'm not saying we should have a metal detector and do weapons screening. I just will point out that it does happen for that exact same room when it's used for municipal court during the daytime. And I think the other thing we should look at, which would have zero budget effect, would be next year, some point before or soon after we swear in the new supervisors, to simply have a county board meeting to tell us what our contingency plan is if someone comes to the meeting with a gun or someone, God forbid, actually is an active shooter at one of our meetings. I do believe, looked at the statute, there'd be justification to have a closed session meeting to tell us what our contingency plan would be in that situation. I would think it'd be good to know, and I think we just need to accept the unfortunate reality that given the inability of this country to deal with this problem is something that we can't say the risk is zero, and we should at least think about what is our plan to deal with it. So I hope that at some point, either through the budget process or somewhere else, we have some way to think about it, because the last thing I would want to have happen is there be a tragedy and people say, we never thought about it, we never considered it, we didn't prepare.
Questions for Supervisor Keefe, Supervisor Nelson?
What about the idea of just having active shooter training for county school boards, as other, municipalities have done? I know the city of Middleton has done that for their staff. Wouldn't that be a more effective approach rather than just having a meeting to discuss?
I guess when I said meeting, I was thinking training.
Yeah. Okay.
I guess the specifics, though, which probably wouldn't want to discuss in an open meeting, would be, which exit are we supposed to use, and something that's specific to the specific room we're in. But yeah, it would essentially be training in what and I would want to have the sheriff, frankly, give us an input as to, do we leave the room? Do we stay in place? Do we, what exactly is the contingency plan? And be trained on it, so if it were to happen, we know exactly what to do, and we would just then implement whatever plan we're trained on, hopefully by the sheriff.
Yeah, and I think from what I know of these training sessions, that's what they're designed to do.
Yeah, and I would be in favor of that. So yeah, training versus meeting, I think they're kind of synonymous in my mind.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Other questions? Okay. Seeing no empty chair, I forgot to mention Supervisor Chenoweth is excused tonight as our Youth and Governance member. Okay. No more questions? Thank you. Supervisor Kiefer? We have 2 registrants listing themselves as available for information only. The first being Jenny Cook of Family Court Services. Jenny, is there a particular amendment for which you are here for information? Well, it's not noted.
I'm just here if I can be of any assistance.
Okay. And then Judge Gaylord, I'm assuming is for operating 1?
I don't know the number, is the halftime social worker.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
for information.
Thank you. And then, let's see if I can read. Okay, this is like the doctor's handwriting here. This must be Judge Bailey. Wishing to speak in support.
I have signed way too many documents in the last 3 years. I am the new presiding judge of the circuit court, so thank you for having me speak. This is my first time in front of the finance committee, so I really appreciate it. Just speaking in support of the amendments for the part-time social worker, I think the explanation has been addressed, and Judge Gaylord would certainly speak to it in more detail if you have any questions. But all of the judges thought that this was a very important item on our list, more so than some of the other things that if we had a wish list, we would ask for. As to the staff council, they are fabulous people. It's hard for us to say you can't have Christmas Eve and Christmas off, or New Year's Eve off. You have to do extra work. So we understand budget concerns, so we're willing to allow them to work less hours those weeks, just so that they're treated like pretty much everybody else. I don't want any staff council coming in on New Year's Day having to feel like he has to work 8 hours. And the reason that's important is because it's tied to their health insurance. They have to work 40 hours a week to get health insurance coverage. So that's why this is important to them. The bar dues as well, they usually come from, this is a great job for people to get their foot in the door. They take the bar and then they're hit with a $1,000 fee to get into the bar, and then state bar dues. So this would just be a little perk that a lot of other lawyers, including other corporate counsel, get their bar dues paid. So it's not a substantial amount of money. I know every dime counts, and we do appreciate your consideration, but thank you for all that you do. And if anyone has any questions for me, otherwise I'll go sit down.
Any questions?
Thank you.
Okay. Next we have District Attorney Ishmael.
Hello, thank you for having me, and thank you for everything that you're about to embark on. I wanted to talk on amendments 2 and 3. Those are the ones that right now immediately impact not just our office, but have the ability to impact our community. Number 2, our victim witness specialist for the juvenile unit. Our contacts have nearly doubled since 16. And one thing that you probably don't have a true appreciation of is, for some victims, contact with our victim witness unit is the only sort of contact they have with the criminal justice system. They may not come to court, they may not want to be part of the formal system. So that contact, that ability to talk to that individual, to understand what the process is, what the next court date is coming up, how they can express their wishes to the court, or even just understand what might be happening in the process, that is important. And those are statutory requirements that we have. So we really need a body to actually keep up with what we're statutorily mandated for. Position number 3, I am really excited about, because that position actually allows us to do something entirely different that we have not been able to do in the juvenile system. When you get to the juvenile system, we control the formal system, okay? There is not a restorative justice component within our formal system that actually would give victims a voice, a better voice, and also have an opportunity to create some empathy, not just with victims, but with our offenders, to really sort of take advantage of that contact, to see each other as humans, to understand the harm that they've created, and to actually come together and really talk about why it happened or what could be done to actually change. And I think if we actually can have that opportunity with our juveniles, we have a better opportunity to actually ensure that they never come back into the system or come into the adult system. we have a very limited time to make real change, because as soon as they hit 17 in our state, we treat them as adults. And if we don't take every opportunity we can to actually have that positive intervention, we run the risk of having them hit at 17. And for some, we'll have to be asking for prison sentences, because the conduct and the history will have gone, and then what happens at 17, they are involved likely with a firearm, because City of Madison alone lost 300 and some guns last year just out of unlocked cars. That, in my mind, is a very scary thought, because that's likely going into the hands of children who are within our community, and they don't need to have access to something that will change somebody's life drastically for the rest of their lives. That's why I'm really excited in talking about those two amendments. I am here to speak on information for anything that you'd like, to talk about the criminal justice system as a whole, but those two amendments impact our office and this community almost immediately if you decide to create them.
Thank you. Questions for District Attorney?
Thank you. There are other members of my staff if you want to hear from them, but we would make them available also whenever you need. Thank you.
And Chuck, Supervisor Stubbs would like to be added as a co-sponsor to operating Amendment 3. All right, thank you. Our next speaker is Andrew Miller of the DA's office.
Thank you for your time. My name is Andrew Miller. I'm the Deputy District Attorney in charge of the juvenile unit in Dane County. I don't have a lot to add to what DA Lazan just said. I would note, really in terms of both for the victim witness position, starting there, just what an important role they play, not only in terms of that statutorily mandated work, but really being an ambassador, I would say, to the juvenile system. Really explaining to victims the purpose of our system, what it's there for, the focus on services and rehabilitation, the focus on taking an individualized approach to each kid we see. Sometimes we get victims who understandably come in and they're very upset. They want potentially harsh sentences or outcomes because of what happened to them. And our victim witness people just do such an amazing job explaining what the purposes of our system is, how we look to address the underlying causes of this behavior. And so again, outside of just being something that is mandated by law, it's just a really important part of making victims understand the system and what we seek to do. And then further, I also am talking in support of, I think it's Amendment 3, the restorative justice position. Don't really have much to add other than it is such an important component that I think is lacking from our system. Juveniles have access to some restorative justice work through some municipal court programs, but for truly serious juvenile offenses, that is not an option for them. So they can go through both, I believe it's both Briar Patch and the YWCA run restorative justice programs, again, that are only for municipal citations. Then you have the CRC, which applies to 17 to 25-year-olds. And so in that range, though, of where it is serious enough rising to a formal delinquency, but they have not yet reached the age of 17, it is just not an option for them. I think there's a wide variety of research and data out there that really just speaks to how effective restorative justice programs are, both in terms of reducing recidivism rates, but also really offering some closure for victims and offenders alike. And then I would also note that this is not, it's not unique to juvenile, or the position is not juvenile only, although I do think we would see it used often. I think specifically one area we would look to put it in place would be, as I'm sure most of you are familiar, we have had an ongoing issue regarding stolen automobiles. That is one area we would really seek to put that restorative approach in place. But it would also then be an option for the adult system where there are cases that are perhaps too serious to be handled by the CRC, but still where a restorative justice approach would be very effective.
Thank you. Any questions for Andrew? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Next speaker, wishing to speak in support, is Jackie, is it Taddick?
Yeah, I just want to say I was in support of
Okay.
both positions.
Of the same positions?
That's correct.
All right. And then we're on to Jackie Foley wishing to speak in favor of operating amendments 2 and 3.
I'm Julie Foley.
What did I say?
Jackie.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No problem at all. Amy is my supervisor, and I would like to just offer my perspective in terms of my program. My unit is the federally funded VOCA program. We actually wrote for one of the positions that are in front of you right now in our federal VOCA grant. We were strongly encouraged to write a proposal this time around that was kind of our dream budget, and the funding did not come through as we anticipated. My unit provides contacts in advance of charging, so the Chapter 950 state constitutional amendment requires that victims are contacted at the point of a charge. Our office philosophy is to contact victims at the earliest possible opportunity, and so we contact victims to allow them to have a voice from the time of the victimization and throughout, to actually give some input into bail arguments and other things. We were not successful in getting the juvenile position in our VOCA funding. I do believe that our kind of broad office philosophy is, again, to provide early contact to give victims a voice from the moment that the victimization occurs and throughout. And so, again, that's our philosophy, but we also have mandates. And in the juvenile position, so that's in position number 2, we are required to make those contacts. It has been absolutely crushing for Jackie as the only victim services person in the juvenile unit. Amy has secured this LTE position, but the numbers are daunting. So I am in support of number 2 and in support of number 3. I just think empathy between victims and offenders and the larger community is really important. And I think the longer that we exist in a system that doesn't have a restorative justice opportunity, there's a lot of, I even see it from the community in articles in the newspaper and the comments after, I think it divides our community. I think it changes who we are. And so to provide the opportunity for victims to actually face the offender and to know that they have a story and that there is a great deal of information that can be shared if they have the opportunity to face one another. I just think it's the right thing to do, it's the just thing to do, it's who we are as a community.
Thank you. Any questions for Julie? Thank you. And our next speaker, and it's the last registration I have, unless anybody wants to bring one up, is Amy Brown, again for amendments 2 and 3.
Hello, my name is Amy Brown, and I'm the Director of Victim Services in the Dane County District Attorney's Office. Again, like you already know, I'm here with the support of many people in my office, speaking on behalf of amendments number 2 and number 3. Just to give you some perspective, I attached this juvenile chart that I can pass around the room that kind of delineates some of the amount of services that we're providing in juvenile delinquency cases. But since 2016, we've really seen a drastic increase in the contacts with victims in the community. A lot of it is attributed to the automobile thefts that we're seeing and kind of the chronicity of it all. In Chapter 950, we're mandated by law to notify victims every time a juvenile commits a new crime and they're a crime victim. So if there is continued car thefts, each one of the victims before the car theft is continued to be contacted. We have some cases where we have to contact 8 different victims one morning before our court appearances in the afternoon to let them know that there was another car theft in a court hearing that they have the right to attend. And so it didn't surprise me when we ran the numbers between June of 2018 and June of 2019, and we were at 3,016 contacts versus 1,800 contacts just 2 years before. Jackie Taddick is here today. She's in support. She does all of our victim contacts with victims of juvenile delinquency crimes. And her job has just gotten to be completely over her capacity to handle. We brought in an LTE that will max out all of his hours, and we're still needing to lean on other parts of the office. The problem is that our case managers carry crushing caseloads. I ran the numbers actually just today to see how many pending cases were on everybody's caseload. I have 3 people who are case managers in our unit that have over 500 pending cases assigned to just them. Jackie Taddick today, has 351 pending cases assigned to her right now. And in juvenile, those cases go through the system pretty quickly, so those numbers are pretty high. So the request for a new victim witness case manager was again in our VOCA grant. That did not come through for us, and so we're reaching out to the county board for some assistance for that, just those basic services. The next position is one that we are all really, really excited about. We continually hear from crime victims requesting a dialogue with the offender. We see it in the juvenile delinquency system the most. We see it happen just organically, where a mother of a juvenile and a victim's mother will just reach out to each other and hug each other after a hearing because they've had an opportunity to get to know each other's stories a little bit more. But we don't have anybody who's assigned to facilitating that dialogue, to taking that connection and making it really meaningful for everybody. And we've had requests. We've had requests in writing. I've had people from Jackie's caseload call and ask me, and we don't have an option in the formal system. What's the best way to handle restorative justice is to have it be victim-centered, to first meet with victims and ask what they're looking for, and then to reach out to defendants, and to do that in a really structured way. Unfortunately, the reimbursement funding for the first 12 positions in my unit come from the Department of Justice, and it comes with a caveat that they can't be involved in restorative justice because they can't be working with defendants. And so I reached out to the Department of Justice because I have people in my unit who really, really want to do this. They're really excited about it. And I was told that I wouldn't be able to be reimbursed for any positions from the state for those positions. So the only way that I can do this is if I have a fully funded county-paid position. Then we have the freedom to move forward with victim-centered restorative justice options. I know for sure we would start doing it in the juvenile system as soon as we could. I also know of many other cases in the adult system, even as serious as homicide cases, where offenders' family members would like to dialogue with victims, and it would be really helpful to them. So there's many different ways. There isn't a process in place right now. Probably the restorative work that could be done is much more than even one position, but we would like to try to pave the way and learn a little bit more about restorative justice through this victim-centered approach. And so I'm here and available to answer any questions you have about the services in the victim witness unit. And my whole
Thank you.
consider.
My apologies, I was taking notes here and lost track of time. You're over your 3 minutes, but that's all right.
Sorry.
No, that's all right, my fault. Supervisor
What would you
Costa.
say is a manageable caseload for your staff?
Well, I start to get worried about people when the numbers in the victim go beyond 300. It depends what kind of support services we can put in place. If we have clerical or account services that can help us with restitution, but as soon as the numbers start going beyond 350 and 400, I start to worry about people and try to figure out what we can do.
Would you say there are some victims not being served because of the heavy caseloads?
I would say I feel really, really confident that we are meeting all of the minimum requirements for victim services. But you know what? In Dane County, we have always prided ourselves on extending beyond those minimum services. For example, all we're required to do is to send a letter in the mail to a crime victim telling them what's been charged, when the next court date is, who are the people assigned to their cases. That is a very different point of contact than receiving a phone call from someone in Julie's unit, in our crime response unit, who can talk to them about their experience, who can help them and make referrals for whatever it is, trauma therapy, financial resources, rebuilding their lives, a connection with them over the phone. When we can do that and we can build trust up front, we really do see people being much more engaged and not as upset and angry with the process or with the offender. And so we would like to continue to be able to do that kind of level of service, but it's becoming more and more difficult.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Amy? Thank you. Those are all the registrants I have, so I'll do one more check. So anybody wishing to address the committee that hasn't had a chance to speak. All right. And just for committee members' information, and I should have stated at the outset, this is for those who may not be aware, we're receiving this information tonight. We're not taking any action on items tonight. We'll be doing that next week. So, and then for committee members' information, as with, just as last night with all the departments we have in our packet, memos updating us on the status of various departments, sustainability and equity plans. I see plans or memos here from Corp Counsel, Clerk of Courts, Family Court, District Attorney's Office, Public Safety and Communications, Emergency Management, and Juvenile Court. I'm assuming criminal justice law clerks would be included as part of clerk of courts, is that correct? However, we do not have a memo from the medical examiner or the sheriff. Sheriff?
Ours was submitted Monday.
Oh, I saw it.
I saw it, I didn't realize, maybe I was
That's not
looking
in our
at it.
Okay.
Are you on equity plans? Or
Yes.
Is this a local time?
If you have questions on those, you want to
Yes.
address.
Are you able, Greg, to give me an update on the missing departments? So we have medical examiners. Was there missing planning department?
I think medical examiners has a meeting scheduled with the Office of Equity and Inclusion on the 31st to begin developing their plan.
Okay.
And the Department of Administration is reaching out to them as well to help. And Clerk of Courts is also working on that plan.
So is it fair to say today, all departments with county governance have submitted equity plans or have a scheduled date for the month of October?
I would believe that to be true.
So is it true to also say that we will have all those equity plans turned in by the end of budget? What are you working with for a time frame?
I would certainly hope so.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions on that subject? All right, then we will move on to the third item on the agenda, and that is a report to the committee regarding the Balancing Act simulation tool. Lauren's going to provide that information.
You all should have a printed copy of shortly after the proposed budget was released, we rolled out a budget simulation tool for the public to be able to go in and see the what various county departments do, to be able to see how much money was budgeted for each department. And so I just want to give you a quick update on what we've learned so far and what people are saying. So As of this morning, there were 550 sessions, so that means that people went into it 550 times. The average time on the site is 6 minutes, and there have been 148 submitted budgets. So of those 550 people that have gone in and played with it, 148 have actually balanced the budget and submitted it. In talking with Balancing Act, the average for submitted budgets is 10%, and we're at 20%, so it's quite high, which is good. In using this tool, what we really wanted to do for this year being the pilot year, we wanted to use it as an educational tool. So we asked people when they were done with it, do you think the simulation is an effective way to gather resident feedback on the budget? And as of now, 67% of people said yes, 33% said no. I don't have to read through all of these, but we've gotten a variety of comments on the effectiveness of the situation, or of the simulation, and overall they've been very positive. I mean, we've gotten formatting, colors, that kind of a thing, quite a few of those. But overall, people have indicated that it's been a great way to learn what the departments do and how complex the county budget is. What have we learned from the simulation itself? What are people saying about budget priorities? Looking at the capital budget, we looked at the median submission changes. So how did people change it? And the top categories for increases in spending were public works and culture, education, and recreation. And then the top categories for decreases were general government, public safety, and criminal justice. And you have in front of you like detailed drop down of each of the departments underneath the categories. For the operating budget, the top categories for increases were public works, conservation, and economic development. And then decreases were general government, culture, education, and recreation. We received a few comments within the simulation on specific items, and I don't need to read them, but they varied with people's different priorities. Keep going. So overall, we were piloting this tool for this year, and it's been a learning experience. Some of the things that we took away were, I mean, 550 is a pretty high number for something that's been out for just a few weeks. And it's, you know, several hundred people that maybe hadn't seen that information before. We also had the short budget video, the high-level video, and 100 people have viewed that as well. So from an education standpoint, I would consider it a success. That's a lot of people. A few things maybe to think about were making the simulation a little bit easier to access. Think about the timing. Is waiting until October 1st the right time to do this? And then working with the company, we were their first legislative body to do this. So it's kind of a learning experience for everybody. So yeah. Any questions?
Questions for them?
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. My question is this available in Spanish? I always think about barriers in our community, and we talk about access. I also like to talk about authentic engagement. What does that consist of? So can you talk a little bit about what's available in multiple languages? Have we gotten that far? Or you talk about a company that can do that work for us? What is that?
It's my understanding that they can do it in multiple languages. It comes at a higher cost. I talked to the city of Dubuque, and they had, I can't remember what language she had told me they had them translated to. It wasn't Spanish or Hmong, and I know it was very expensive. I'm not saying that we shouldn't do it, but I know that is a factor.
That's something I think we should
Yeah.
do if we're gonna ask for participation from Dane County residents or whoever. Because I think that is a barrier that we have, especially for communities of color. In order to feel like you've had authentic engagement, you have to reach people where they are. So that's something I think this board should think about if we're asking for other voices that have not necessarily been engaged.
Supervisor Nelson.
I had a couple questions. First of all, with there were 550 sessions, and you mentioned that average time on the site is 6 minutes. First of all, I can better confess, I haven't taken a deep dive into this yet, so I just don't have as much of a familiarity with it as I probably should have at this point. But with the 148 that's submitted budget, would they be likely to have spent more time doing that?
I can't speak to it, honestly.
Yeah.
I can look, I can check to see if that's data that's in there.
Yeah.
But, I mean, there's a lot of data behind this,
Yeah.
so.
And then the other thing that I was thinking about regarding this is some of the information that is generated. And I was wondering if there's some way to maybe dig down a little deeper. I mean, for example, human services is the largest part of our budget, so maybe you'd think that would get a lot of attention, but I think it would be interesting to know what particular areas got the most hits, so to speak. So if there was a smaller area of government, say extension or the zoo, that for some reason just generated a lot of activity, that would be useful information to know. And is it all on on capital or operating? Is it more or less? So I think if drilling down, it might give us some good information about specific departments, if indeed there's enough of a groundswell on people using this. So if that, it would be interesting to see a report if there's enough data to break it down that far.
I know, we can see how many clicks there were.
Yeah,
so
okay.
how many times people
Even that alone
increased or
would be a good
decreased,
start.
or within the simulation you can click for more information. So one of them I think was really high was debt service. People didn't know what debt service was, so you could click for information about it. So we can see the numbers on what people went into.
Okay, thanks.
I have more of a comment. Lauren has led the engagement, a number of groups of supervisors, and have worked with her on this, and I think it's an interesting beginning to this. And I look forward to figuring out how we can do it next year, that we can get more information into this and figure out, is there a way to begin this process earlier using the 8-department budget submissions or ways to do that? But it's a good process to try to figure out how to get more information on our budget out in the community. So thank you.
Anything else?
Yeah, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Everybody else, but-
Chair, wants you to go
Wait,
yes.
I would echo Supervisor Nelson's desire to see sort of a drill down on areas that are maybe targeted more, because it would give us maybe an idea of where there might be some emerging issues or concerns. Just as we often hear from people in public meetings about one subject more than another. And that informs us of what may be an emerging concern in the community. You mentioned one of the things that needs maybe improvement is easier access. Can you give an example, or other than perhaps maybe additional languages?
Sure. So this year you got to the simulation through Polco. We already have a relationship with Polco, and I'm not sure if that made it more challenging, because you went there for a launching point, and then you went into pre-simulation, and then you went back to Polco. I think it worked well to gauge what people thought of the simulation, you know, how effective it was. But I think that made it a little more difficult to get into it.
So there's an additional click to get in, and then didn't, from the page, the POCO link to get into the simulation, didn't it also state that there'd be a survey afterwards?
And it was those 2 questions.
Just the 2 questions, which may have also been a, maybe for some committee.
Yep.
You mentioned that the balancing act gave you information that sort of averaged, that others, an average amount of time, not time.
The number of
10
submitted.
versus 20%
Yep.
is a measure
Yep.
of which?
So that is the number of people that actually balanced
submitted.
their budget and submitted it.
Okay. Okay. Did they provide something of an average amount? I mean, is 6 minutes? Well, you know, average time, is not much.
I don't know how it compares. I know that Milwaukee County, which has been doing it for a few years now, their average time on the site is 20 minutes. I believe they also, within the simulation, you can have scenario questions, and I believe they have more of those. So
Yeah, and that's something we may
I think there's
consider
different
when-
variables to drive that time. But if you think about it, 6 minutes on, when you're just on the internet, 6 minutes is kind of a long time to sit on one website.
Attention spans these days. Especially when submitting a budget. I think we've spent more time here in these last couple of days than we have with our changes. So, anyhow, but thank you.
One more question. On the comments from the public, I think you had pointed this out earlier, but one of them is a hard copy form should be sent to all registered voters and students living within Dane County. Not everyone has access to a computer. Well, if we did that, we'd be doing a budget amendment on paper, more paper. But was there, I know when we talked about this at our previous, one of our meetings, Engage Dane meetings, I think I mentioned reaching out to public libraries.
And you did
that?
Yeah, we did. We had those budget cards.
Oh,
made,
great, yeah.
And those went out to the public libraries in Dane County.
You know, because all of the 18 libraries and public libraries in the county have public access computers, and quite a few now, and that would be a great way for them to reach out and promote this. So, yeah, good, thanks.
Anything else?
And community centers also have libraries, so you might want to think about that for the next outreach, community centers as well.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right.
Good this time?
All right, on to section C of our agenda, which is referrals of ordinance amendments and resolutions. We have a couple, again, we're not taking action on these tonight as they're fees affecting the budget. The first one is OA 18, amending Chapter 62 of the Dane County Code of Ordinances regarding medical examiner fees. Are there any questions regarding this ordinance? Right. On to item 2 is OA 24, amending Chapter 62 of the Dane County Code of Ordinances regarding rescinding juvenile home detention fee. Any questions or discussion? Questions, I should say. All right. That takes care of that section of the agenda. We're on to future meeting items and dates. Our next meeting is November 5th, 5:30 p.m. for continued budget deliberations. Tuesday.
Yeah, make sure Chuck.
Yes, Chuck.
Got it. Thank you.
All right. And then public comment for items not on the agenda. Is there anybody with us tonight wishing to address the committee regarding an item not listed on our agenda? Supervisor Stubbs.
Sure, thank you, Mr. Chair. On tonight, there's a fellow here in the audience that actually is in my office for 3 weeks. She's part of the American Council of Young Political Leaders. Ms. Ha, can you come forward for a moment? She's a program officer for the Center for Education, Promotion, and Empowerment for women in Vietnam. She earned a bachelor's degree in business administration. She is here and she's interested in learning more about how U.S. citizens participate in the creation and management of state government budgets, and she wanted to see how budgets work at a local level. So I invited her tonight. She's going to apply her findings here, so she has a project to do and go back and look and see how the budgets work for women and minorities in Vietnam. So I wanted to bring her here just to say hi to everyone. I will be bringing her around county board. So she said, I want to make sure I can come to your county meeting tonight. So this is Ha, and I asked if you would just welcome her. She's here from Vietnam for the first snow. Very first snow. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Welcome. All right, there's no other business is allowed by law? Then we shall have a motion to adjourn. Moved by Supervisor Nelson, seconded by Ratcliffe. Supervisor Ratcliffe. All in favor of adjournment, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say no.